red light. And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to welcome today Caite Dolan-Leach, here to give us the inside scoop on her brand new book out next Tuesday, May 10th, Dark Circles. Caite, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Thanks for tuning in on this special pre-launch event. Tell us about this book.
Hey, Sara, thanks so much for having me. Like you said, I'm Caite Dolan-Leach. I'm an upstate New York Finger Lakes-based writer, and this little book is my third novel, and it centers around an embattled celebrity, a famous actress whose life is sort of falling apart, and she ends up going to a kind of spooky wellness center spiritual retreat on Seneca Lake in upstate New York, and from there realizes that things are maybe not quite as well as she thought they were. And she starts to investigate a series of missing women, all of whom have connections with this particular spiritual retreat. And she starts a true crime podcast to get to the bottom of it.
Ooh, thanks for all the hearts up on Facebook, you guys. I know you're as intrigued as I am. All of these things I love. We're talking wellness. We're talking missing people. We're talking unraveling a mystery. We're talking a woman on the quest for truth. We're talking true crime podcasts. Who else is a murderino? Hands up, let us know. So we're going to get the scoop on all of that and much, much more. So if you've been here before, you know how it works. And if you're new, welcome. We're so happy to have you back. Here's how it works. Every Monday for hashtag Mystery Monday, because you know Mondays can be murder, I give you my handpicked featured authors and you get to ask them anything. So ask Caite about Dark Circles. Ask her about her connection to spiritual retreats, backstabbing and bitchery. Ooh, tasty true crime podcasts, all the things, writing her first novel, writing her third novel. What's the difference? What she's learned. Oh my goodness, so much to talk about. Let's get right into it. So get your comments going in the, get your questions going in the comments. I'll get them right over to her. This is your time to talk to Caite. Meanwhile, while you're thinking of your questions, I'm going to kick off with a few of Caite's amazing blurbs. So let's start with NPR Best Book of the Year. NPR raving a sharp, spellbinding, cautionary tale, one that reminds us that even those who do remember the past might also wind up repeating it. Congratulations on that, Caite. I love NPR. So what an incredible, well-earned, hugely deserved accolade. So let's start there. Why did you want to write this cautionary tale?
Well, actually, this might be an awkward one to start with because that's for my second novel.
Oh my goodness, they have that listed under your praise.
Okay. I thought I saw that up. Yeah, I was double checking that. That's nobody's fault. but
no worries whatsoever. Okay, perfect. So let's talk about writing your first book versus writing your second book versus writing your third book. So earning that kind of praise for your second book was the pressure to then live up to and surpass that on the third book. Was it paralyzing? Was it inspiring? I mean, that could sort of render me at home biting my nails for the next 6 months. What was that like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when you write your first novel, it's terrifying and you're in completely unknown territory, but that gives you so much freedom to make mistakes, really, and to experiment and figure out what you're doing in this industry and as a storyteller. And then once that's published, all of a sudden you have all of this stuff that goes with being a professional author. Unfortunately, the side of things that is branding, like you have a brand as an author, so you're required to kind of maintain a sort of consistency from one book to the next. And then the things like pressure, when debuts get a lot of attention, and mine got lots of great stuff. And then when your second and third ones are coming out, you never know if it's going to live up to the hype. And I think just the sort of existential terror involved in trying to do as well or even better from what you did the first time around, and recreating what is essentially alchemy. It's magic. You can't do it again. It's going to be different every single time. So I think the second book was harder than the third book. Finally, maybe there's a little sense of rhythm that starts to kick in once you've done it at least a few times.
So how did you overcome this existential terror? So you're saying that debuts get a lot of attention, but you're new here, so you don't know what you're doing. Maybe it's going to work. There's no pressure on you because nobody knows you. Nobody knows if it's going to be good or not. Nobody knows how it's going to be received. Then yay, you did it. You're getting great reviews. It's resonating with people. And then of course the existential terror sets in. Can you do it again? So as an anxiety sufferer, I am feeling this. How do you work through it?
I mean, I feel like the best way to do it is to ignore it as much as possible. And you try to not think about it when you're doing the actual writing. Like your first job is to get words down on the page. And when you're doing that, you just try not to think about who might read it, what they might say about it in public, in the New York Times, and all of these very high profile places. You just think about the story, about the book. And then by the time that's finished, I always feel like I can let go a little bit. And then it enters into a new phase of life where it's kind of to some extent almost somebody else's problem until pub week, and then you have to come and talk about it in person and remember all of the horrible embarrassing things you might have done on print for the rest of forever.
Right. Oh my god.
Repression is what I would recommend.
Okay, so we're getting just right into the meat of it. We're talking repression, we're talking existential terror, we're talking ignoring it. We're talking all the good things. Leslie says hello from Canada, her signature Canadian hello. Leslie, always a pleasure to have you. Welcome to the conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Janine, welcome to the conversation. She's saying, I cannot write. I always wished I could, but I'm happy to read all the good stuff that you are writing. So Janine, clearly resonating with that existential terror. And I think that's something that we all face in various facets of our life. So for you, Kate, it's just, you're tuning it out, rocking in the corner, or, I mean, do you just have to say stop, or do you have any tools do you use any yoga or wellness tools, to work through it?
No, my repression is all very unhealthy. White wine, just pure blinkers, and other fiction, I guess, is probably maybe the healthiest way to kind of escape and exist in a different world, and just trying not to measure your own writing against other authors while you're doing it, which is a fine little tightrope to walk. But yeah, so I have to say I probably don't have healthy suggestions. I tend to exist in the space that I need to create a little bit of brain space for the books, and that's kind of it's survival, I guess.
Okay, so Kate will be in the corner doing vodka shots and smoking cigarettes, chain smoking cigarettes, but just getting those words on the page.
That's me. Nope. The yoga's for later. The yoga's for a different phase. I'll start running after I have a draft.
Perfect. Marcy, welcome to the conversation. Marcy Strickler-McCreary saying hello from the island of Nantucket. Marcy, welcome to the conversation. An amazing author in her own right who will be coming on the show when her next book is out. So excited. Can't wait. And Janine is saying terror. Yes. Right, Janine? We all resonate with that. Janine would also is saying, she said, I am drawn to titles and covers. Me too, Janine. I will be that person. Shallow, call me shallow. I don't care. I will judge a book by its cover. I will judge a book by its title. So let's talk about this title and cover, Kate. So let's start with the title. Tell us the story of it. Did it come to you in a flash of genius? Did someone assign this to you? Were there 99 others you discarded? Give us the inside scoop.
Yeah, so titles are always super complicated for me. I have a working title that I get very attached to, and that's the title of the book for like 90% of its life until we get to the sort of push to come to shove moment. And then there's usually a reason why everyone's like, oh, no, that's a little obscure, or that's not really going to work, or it's too similar to this other title. So there's the negotiation phase. And then I'm always like a little like deer in headlights, stricken, heartbroken, not sure what to do, and have to kind of go back to the drawing board. So that absolutely happened with Dark Circles. It was originally called Vultures for a really long time, which is the name of the podcast inside of the book. So that's still alive inside the book. But it wasn't totally working. It wasn't resonating for all the marketing publicity people. A lot of people we asked were kind of like, is that a thriller? I can't tell. So we kind of went back to the drawing board and tried out those other 2 or 3 dozen titles that just weren't quite doing it. And then one day I just sort of woke up and I was like, have we tried Dark Circles? This seems like a really obvious one. I was looking, the word circles appears on the first 10 pages of the book like 8 or 9 times. And so does the word dark. And I was like, oh, this seems like how did we overlook this? This is really obvious. And then everyone was like, oh yeah, it sure is. So That's
Oh,
how, and it is usually like that, right? It'll be right in front of you the whole time, and you'll realize, oh gosh, that is the title.
oh my gosh. Marcy, reading my mind, I needed to know the original title too. So vultures. Kate, do you remember any of the 2 or 3 dozen ones that were discarded? Now we all have to know.
Oh gosh, I probably have repressed those too, because again, this was another painful part of the process, and just sort of trying to imagine the book. You know, titles are so hugely important. It's going to be attached to your name for the rest of your life. And I'm totally blanking on them
Oh
because
my
I
God,
was
the
just
pressure.
I couldn't see any of them on the cover of the book, right? And that they just kind of all flitted out of my brain every time we tried them out.
So speaking of the cover, let's segue into Janine's second part of the question. She would like to know about the cover. So the cover is gorgeous. It's this yummy blue turquoise. And actually, when I was doing my book talk video of it, I took the color picker, that little sort of eyedropper thing, and I tried to pick up this exact delicious turquoise because it's so freaking pretty. So
Mm-hmm.
tell us about the cover, Kate. Did you get input into it? Was this the first one or one of 3 dozen?
I'm really lucky to work with a really strong team at Random House and now Ballantine. So often what happens is they'll come to me with kind of their front runner, the thing that
Ooh,
they're most excited about. And that was what happened with Dark Circles. They had some like backups, but they said, we kind of think this is the way to go. And how do you feel about it? And I loved the water, right? Because it's set on a lake. And
right.
you get the sort of circular imagery of the water, and that worked fabulously for me. and
Yeah.
and then they just asked me to help input with the color palette, and they were just sort of tweaking. We had some that were a little more yellow, we had some that had pink in them,
Oh,
we went
interesting.
through a whole range, and I just really liked the sort of the turquoise that pops. Here, you've got the arc. It's really shiny in the actual
Ooh,
edition,
that
if you
is
can maybe
shiny.
see it.
And
And
I
so
like all of the ripples of the water because of course the idea of actions having consequences rippling out affecting
exactly.
other people, and of course also coordinating with the circles of the title. So clever, so cool.
And this has
um
like an almost reflective quality, right? Because it kind of
Ooh, I see what
reflects
you
off
did
stuff.
there, Kate. I'm picking up what you're putting
Getting
down.
all meta. Yep.
Janine is giving us the thumbs up on that. Jeannie, I totally agree. Loving this. Leslie's saying that she says she's so she's so drawn by covers and titles. I totally agree, Leslie. Okay. Janine is saying yes, it's such a beautiful cover. Okay, let's get into the process of writing this book. So your third book, Janine would like to know: are you a pantser or are you a planner?
I'm definitely a pantser. I've heard it architect gardener, so I like pantser or
Ooh,
planner. I'm assuming they map pretty similarly onto that. I start with an idea, and then I kind of just see what happens and write. You kind of just write your way through, and the endings are usually as much a surprise for me as I hope they are for readers. I'm often kind of like, oh, I don't know how we ended up here. Cool. And that's sort of then you go back and fix all the gaping open ends that you've things that you've left open. But I do like the sense of surprise and just kind of going. I write start to finish usually when I'm doing a draft, just to see where we go.
oh my gosh, that's amazing. So I'm also a pantser, but that led me down a very dark circle path where, by which I mean a dead end, where I was like, oh my God, I wrote the length of 2 books and now I got to back it up and get out of this alley that I have trapped myself in.
Yeah.
Does that happen to you too? And does that make you want to say, next time I will plan? Or are you like, no, pants or die?
It has happened to me, and I've written entire novels that in the end were just kind of not totally they didn't totally work, right?
Same.
And if you've spent a year or two on a project, and it's just kind of like oopsie daisies, that was a
Yeah.
dead end in the end.
Yeah.
You kind of have to just swallow it and move on, and try not to regret that time, because you probably learned something. I've tried, so with my second novel, I did a little bit more planning than I often do. Just again, that insecurity we were talking about, the fear, and having a little bit of a roadmap was comforting to me. But it also took a lot of my sense of urgency away from the writing, and
Ooh.
it took me longer to write. And I felt like
Mm.
because I already knew answers to some critical questions, I wasn't as like desperate to get to the end as I sometimes am when I'm drafting. So no, I think I'm going to stick with it.
Yay, yay. Okay, cool. So Caite, how long did it take you? So you referenced just now that you had tried planning on one of your subsequent books. What else have you learned? What else have you learned along the way?
Oh, that's a tough question. Because again, I feel like you sort of uh uh, obviously I'm coming out as someone who represses a lot of the things that happen to them as they go through a book. I'm not a very I don't think I'm a very conscious writer. I'm not super aware of what's going on while I'm writing something.
Yeah.
And I'm probably, I'm not journaling and taking good notes about the things I should pay attention to next time. I think I have a real like let the magic flow through you sort of thing and just hope that it keeps happening. Which is maybe not a very learning based process.
And yet getting you lots of hearts up on Facebook. Thanks for all the love, you guys. Thank you. Anissa, welcome to the conversation, saying hello, Caite and Sara from South Carolina. Anissa, welcome to the conversation. So great to have you. And she would like to know, what is your favorite part of the writing process? Is it writing or editing or research, and why? Great question, Anissa.
Yeah, classic question. So I like drafting. Drafting is when I'm usually the most energized, when I'm the most excited about a project. The research leading up to that is usually it's like the beginning of something, and you have like a sense of anticipation. But the drafting for me is when it just kind of starts to sing and really kicks off into high gear, and I tend to just draft really quickly and churn my way through a first draft, and then comes the very painful editing process, which for me is the lengthiest bit. It takes forever and can be really painful because you're having to cut scenes that you might be really attached to, or get rid of characters even that you love, or just trim down storylines that aren't working. Again, my second novel, I think I ended up cutting something like 30 or 40,000 words from a draft. And it's kind of that kill your darlings moment, which is painful. So
yes. And which was that
pure potential when everything could
was the 30 to 40,000 cut?
My second one, we went to the woods. That one was pain. That whole book was a painful process.
And yet an NPR best book of the year.
Sometimes I guess it's like with yoga, like with exercise. Sometimes you've got to just power through.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I want to talk more about your research process, but first I want to get over to this question from Marcy. She'd like to know, what was the inspiration for your novel? Marcy, great question, especially from a fellow thriller writer. We're so happy you're here.
I never know how to answer this question. I always feel like there should be like a tidy little well, I had this one thought and it led to this other thought and boom, there we got a novel. For me, often the novel will spring from like the first 3 pages of the book. I'll sit down and almost in a fugue state, just write 3 pages and then emerge from it and be like, okay, I guess that's my narrator. And I guess that's the problem she's currently confronting. And we'll maybe just try to write another 20 or 30 pages and see what ends up. So that's happened for all 3 of my books. It was just the product of kind of sitting down and having just a weird burst of writing and then wanting to know more about the story. And if you want to know more, that's the sign you should keep going. And if you don't, then maybe you've just written a very cute short story and you can move on.
Ooh, I'm intrigued by your use of the word fugue state. So I didn't even know that was a thing until 2 years ago. And then I hosted an author who actually is a Penn Faulkner nominee who wrote a book about fugue states. And then I, of course, went down the research rabbit hole on what a fugue state is and how many people were diagnosed with fugue states around the turn of the century, around the same time that women were getting diagnosed with hysteria, when men were allowed to just wander off and leave their lives. And that was when they could blame a fugue state. And so I became really interested in what the heck that fugue state is. So how do you induce the fugue states?
Short answer, you can't really. And sometimes it can be really frustrating because you're sort of waiting for that, I don't call it writer's block, but just sort of waiting for that thing to happen and kick into the next gear where you're sort of like, all right, come on, where are you? What's happening? But the best way to sort of help nudge it into existence is reading and writing and watching things, or really more reading and watching things, kind of just ingesting and consuming as much narrative and as many stories as possible. That's usually, there'll be a glimmer there in something that will sort of initiate or spark that moment where you're like, oh, here we go. We might have it. Now we might have it.
The best moment. Oh, thank God. Let's do that.
Right. That's how I justify binge watching entire seasons and, reading, not getting out of bed and reading novels for.
That's research, Kate. That's part of your job.
It's my process.
Get back in bed.
Yep.
Janine would like to know cool question. What draws you to writing this genre? So clearly you're on Mystery and Thriller Mavens. We're all here for the mysteries and thrillers. It's our favorite genre. I was a Nancy Drew girl. I know so many of us are. Why? What is it for you?
I mean, I'm interested in genre in general. I kind of like all genres, and I like any book that is trying to play by the rules of genre. I feel like that sort of constraint gives you a little creativity because you're always sort of pushing against what you're allowed to do in the genre. And I like that sort of pressure, that pushback. But the thriller mystery genre specifically, I mean, I like dark stories. I like bodies. I like murder mysteries. I was a Nancy Drew kid too. And I was just always, I like murder mysteries were kind of my happy spot as a kid, and then also into my adolescence. And to this day, if I'm not in the mood for a BBC crime drama, I'm probably not like awake and alive.
Yeah, exactly. I think I like dark stories. I like bodies is probably the best quote I've heard this year. So this resonates, right, guys? Janine is saying yes, she loves that. Janine, right? We just get that. We get that because we're the same. We are feeling that too. Oh my goodness. Hi, Lecha. Welcome to the conversation. Always a pleasure to have you, ma'am, joining us live from Texas. And Lecha would like to know, did you have to do a lot of research on your new upcoming release out next Tuesday? So let's talk about this. Kate, so you live in the Finger Lakes region, which is upstate New York. Did you go undercover as a spiritual seeker, as a yogi? Did you infiltrate, wearing your patchouli and mala beads? Did you sneak in there, or what's the scoop?
I feel like I didn't really have to. I grew up in the Finger Lakes, and it's just definitely a very, I'm trying to think of a politic way to say this, but a crystal-based community.
Okay. I've never been there. I don't know anything about it. So tell us.
Yeah, so it's like, I imagine a lot of sort of parts of Southern California. We're all into saging our house, and we've got our crystal stores, and there's like a strong wheatgrass and health food co-op sort of contingency. The yoga studios have been around since like the early 60s. It's not a new fad for Ithaca. So I feel like that was just kind of part of the vocabulary, the lexicon of my childhood, of growing up in this part of the world where everyone's kind of into astrology and doing all this other sort of hippy dippy stuff. So that was research in its way, but I had to do research for for how true crime podcasts work a little bit. I definitely went into a much deeper dive. I was already an aficionado, but I started to do it sort of compulsively, hours every day, listening to true crime podcasts, keeping track of like what made them work narratively, that sort of thing. What sort of tics and tropes were repeated, what sort of words get used all the time. So I did a lot with the true crime stuff. And then I was also, because there's a sort of cult element, I was listening to a lot of podcasts that had to do with cults, and, double points if it was cults that have to do with the wellness industry, right?
Totally. So, I've never been to the Finger Lakes region, so I just learned a lot, but that is familiar, right? I've seen that in, the Berkshires and in various hippy dippy corners of the world. So I'm totally picturing the crystal stores and the wheatgrass shop. Now, Kate, we were talking about this a little bit right before we went live, but I want to share the conversation with everybody who's on right now. So why did you want to, get into taking on the sometimes inauthentic, sometimes really harmful world of wellness? It's such an important topic. Why did you want to do that?
I mean, I think because they make for very relatable villains, I think. I think most people can find their way into seeing this as an almost predatory sort of relationship where people who need help, who are looking for something to help make them healthier or to help them get centered or to help them, I don't know, recover from a drug or alcohol addiction, all these different things that we go to the wellness industry for in a time of crisis. And then the wellness industry often not necessarily coming back from an authentic, helpful place, but more from a place where they can profit off of someone else's vulnerability, where they can sell more crystals than wheatgrass, essentially. And that's less important maybe than helping someone deal with trauma or something that's been happening to them. So it felt like a very easy way to create a villain that would be recognizable, but also one that we could sort of peel the layers, as thrillers like to do. You get a little bit more a deeper and deeper glimpse into what makes them tick, what makes this particular cult kind of run, and what their motivations are, the deeper you get into the novel.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, that is an effective storytelling, thrilleristic, narrative tool, but also it's an important topic because I think if you're paying attention to the wellness industry, which as a yoga teacher I am, it can be really predatory and really dangerous in a way that makes me very uncomfortable, because some people want to, for reasons I don't fully understand, want to appoint themselves sort of, assign themselves to have a role as the healer or some sort of power. And it can be a really dangerous dynamic. And we've seen that play out over and over and over again. So I think it's important to see that. And I like seeing it pop up here in the thriller world. Yay. Publishers Weekly calls it an evocative, character propelled thriller. So let's talk about the creation of a character. What do you think is the key to writing an evocative, character propelled thriller?
Yeah, so for me, I feel like all my books are character propelled in a lot of ways, but there's often subtext there, which means they're very unlikable characters.
Ooh,
Which might be, Publishers Weekly is thankfully not coming out and saying that, but a lot of people who read my books are aware of the fact that the characters are quite unlikable, and you kind of have to be okay with that going into most of the stuff I write, because they're usually complicated women who have these sort of dark sides and conflicts, and aren't always trying to put their best foot forward or be the most appealing person. And I think just being able to double down on what makes them tick, what motivates them to do the occasionally really screwed up things they do, is what makes it, in the publishing speak, character propelled, right?
I love that. Okay, we have 2 minutes left and we got 2 questions that just came in. So we're going to enter the lightning round. Kate, are you ready?
I am.
Okay. Janine, you're first. She'd like to know, what is next for you? Great question, Janine.
So I have started working on something else. It's definitely a little different. And I what that's going to mean is still a bit of a question mark moving forward. But in the interest of being lightning round, I will say my only teaser is that I'm doing a lot of research about mushrooms and fungi at the moment.
Whoa. I was not expecting to hear. I did not have mushrooms and fungi on my bingo card today, y'all. Did anyone else have mushrooms and fungi on their bingo card? That is so hilarious. First of all, I love mushrooms. Anytime I go to a restaurant and I see mushrooms in a dish, I'm always like, oh, I'm going to get that. Chanterelles, hen of the woods, even, just little button mushrooms. I love even just spaghetti and mushrooms. Oh my God, so delicious. Are these
wild foraging communities
mind-altering mushrooms, or are you talking just like foraging mushrooms?
More of the foraging types. The foraging community is definitely very strange, and there's some sinister elements. And I'm also getting sucked into the science of it, the way that the networks work, and the sort of how mushrooms and fungi in general sort of contribute to ecosystems, and sort of what that looks like for ecological change. It's going to be a weird book.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. I've also heard that mushrooms are really good at like cleaning up the forest floor. They're filtering. They're actually, which is really good for the forest in which the environment in which they are, growing.
And you can use them to clean up toxic spills and all kinds of other stuff. It's wild. They're wild. I'm having a great time.
They are wild. I see what you did there.
Mm.
Marcy, ooh, cool question. She said, I've been reading the opening pages on Amazon as I'm listening to you guys, and I can't wait to add this to my reading list. Yay. What a great comment, especially coming from you, Marcy, because you're such an amazing writer in your own right. Can't wait to have you on the show when your next book comes out. Y'all, I want to remind you, this book is not even out yet. This is Caite's first pre-launch event, because you know you get it here first on Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Here is the link. So pre-order now from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore. Hit that pre-order link, and the good folks at Murder by the Book will wrap it and ship to you next Tuesday, May 10th, when the book comes out. So here's the link, no matter where you're watching, because we're streaming 6 platforms right now across YouTube and Facebook. Here's the link. Click add to cart. Leacha is saying she loves mushrooms too. Leacha, right. They're so delicious and they're so good for you. Janine saying she's so excited for your next weird book, self-identified weird book. She's adding that mushrooms are an interesting community all on their own. Oh, I like the use of the word community about them. Leacha echoing that, saying your upcoming book sounds like a great read. Very interesting. Thank you for everybody for all of your wonderful comments. She's saying mushroom. Oh, sorry, I already clicked on that one. She said, thank you, everyone. Janine, thank you for joining us. Leacha saying Dark Circle sounds like a great new read. I have enjoyed this live chat very much. Thank you so much. Leacha, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to see your name pop up. Y'all, I want to remind you, the book is not even out. This is her first event. This is your first chance to hear about it. Here is the link one more time. So pre-order it now, and the Murder by the Book will send it out to you next week. Caite, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for the inside scoop into your writing process, into the backstory. Again, book list raving, this gripping story filled with irony and cringe-inducing revelations. Oh my God, I love the cringe. Is guaranteed to keep readers mesmerized with its bizarre plot twists and gasp-producing ending. A perfect read. Alike for fans of the Steve Martin and Martin Short TV series, Only Murders in the Building. Oh my God, I loved that one. And I know everyone else did too. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day. I'll be back at the top of the hour with Amy and Pellizzeri, and then I'm back at 7 and 8 tonight with the amazing Allison Brennan and debut author Karen Wynn. I will see you then. Stay tuned for Mystery Monday, because you know Mondays can be murder.
Thanks, everybody.